Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into a pretty wild analysis, one that makes some serious accusations about Coinbase and its alleged role in manipulating the price of XRP. We're going to go straight to the source material here to really unpack the claims, the data, and of course, the alleged motives behind it all.
All right, so let's just jump right in. The whole thing really starts with this one number, the number at the absolute heart of the accusation, 69%. I mean, it's a figure that definitely grabs your attention. And according to this analysis, it's basically the key that unlocks this entire story.
So the obvious question, right? 69% of what? Well, according to the source, that's the percentage of XRP that Coinbase allegedly offloaded from its corporate holdings. And we're not talking over a long period of time. This happened in just a few weeks. It was a massive sell-off, and the analysis claims this was anything but a routine rebalancing.
So here we go. A startling accusation. And really, this dramatic reduction in holdings, that's the inciting incident. It's the event that kicked off this whole deep dive into the on-chain data, the public records on the blockchain. This is what takes it from just a simple market move to a really startling accusation of deliberate manipulation. And wow, this slide really puts it all into perspective. The source's data shows Coinbase's holdings just plummeting from 780 million XRP all the way down to 199 million. And you got to understand, this didn't just change their balance sheet. It knocked them from their spot as the fifth largest holder all the way down to barely cracking the top 10. That's a massive change. All right, Section 2, decoding the data trail. Now look, a claim this big needs some pretty solid evidence. So let's follow the data and see what this analysis actually found.
The investigation really zeroes in on this raw number right here, 581 million. That's the total amount of XRP that was moved out of Coinbase wallets, according to the source. And to put that into perspective for you, at the time of this analysis, we're talking about a move worth roughly 300 million US dollars. Yeah, that's a significant sum of money by any standard. Okay, now this is where things get really interesting. Where did all that XRP go? The source claims that a huge chunk of it, 40% of the outflows, wasn't just sold on the open market. Nope. It was allegedly funneled through over-the-counter desks, OTC desks, with connections to major New York financial institutions. And here's maybe the most crucial part of the whole argument. The analysis claims these sales weren't just random. The timing of these massive outflows allegedly coincided with every major drop in XRP's price. The suggestion here isn't just correlation, it's causation. All right, Section 3, suspicious trading patterns. So this brings us from the what to the how. The claim here isn't just that they sold a lot of XRP, but that it was an engineered strategy carried out using some very specific and suspicious trading patterns. So, the investigation highlights three specific tactics. First, selling during low liquidity. We're talking 72% of the sell volume allegedly hitting between 2 and 5 a.m. UTC, when there are fewer buyers around, making it easier to push the price down. Second, they apparently fragmented the flows, routing the sales through a whole bunch of different wallets to hide the true size of what they were doing. And third, suppressing rallies. The report says volume spikes were used to just squash any upward momentum, especially when the price got near that $1.20 mark. Which brings us to Section 4, uncovering the motives. And this is the million-dollar question, isn't it? Why? Why would they do this? If these claims are true, what possible motive could Coinbase have for suppressing the price of XRP? So, according to the source, why would Coinbase allegedly do this? Well, the analysis doesn't just leave it at the data. It proposes three potential motives, and together, they weave this really complex story of competition, Wall Street moves, and even political games. So, let's look at these three alleged motives. First up, what the source calls ETH-gate pressure, the idea that they were caving to pressure from powerful entities tied to the Ethereum ecosystem. Second, Wall Street positioning. Basically allowing big institutional players to buy up XRP at a discount from regular retail sellers. And third, lobbying pressure. The theory is that this would weaken Ripple's negotiating power in all those ongoing political discussions in the US. Next up, Section 5, following the money. Okay, so we've got the what, the how, and the alleged why. Now the source claims to follow the money trail to figure out who actually benefited from all of this. And check this out. To back up its case, the analysis created a custom metric called the XRP Suppression Index. And it claims this index shows a correlation of 0.87.
Now, in statistics, that is a remarkably high number. It suggests that Coinbase's sales and the lid on XRP's price were moving in almost perfect lockstep.
And this really leads to the source's core accusation, which is captured perfectly in this quote. Coinbase looks more like a price control tool than an exchange. I mean, that's a powerful and very direct claim. It completely reframes their role from a simple marketplace to an active tool for market control.
So where did the XRP actually go? Well, the analysis alleges two main destinations. A large amount of it apparently ended up in wallets that are linked to BlackRock's custody services, and another portion was moved over to Hong Kong OTC desks, suspiciously just before positive news was announced about a new Ripple Asia corridor. Then the analysis really zooms out to look at the global implications. The argument is that this isn't just about one crypto asset. No, this is framed as a big, defensive move, a move to protect SWIFT-affiliated banks from sudden liquidity shocks, to protect Ethereum from being overtaken by institutional corridors built on XRP, and to protect the old guard from what the source calls XRP's natural multiplier effect.
So that brings us to the final section, the final signal. What is the ultimate takeaway from this whole analysis? If you accept the data and the premises here, what is the final signal that's being sent by this massive sell-off?
Well, the argument concludes with a pretty big twist. The source claims this huge 69% sell-off isn't a signal of XRP's weakness, but actually the exact opposite. It's framed as a signal of desperation from the old guard, a sign that XRP has become too powerful, too close to the core of the traditional financial system.
But the source ends on a predictive note. It says that every phase of suppression, well, it has an end. The suggestion is that this level of control simply can't be maintained forever.
And that's where the whole analysis leaves us. It concludes that when this control is finally lost, XRP doesn't just rise, it explodes. Which leaves us with the final question: what happens when a spring this compressed is finally released?